LFG has long since been a topic in the Guild Wars 2 community that has oscillated back and forth between thinking it is a good idea and that it is not really needed. Though, with so many public instances of endgame content which has been implemented with Icebird Saga, I do think that it provides a much more convenient way to begin participating in endgame content, and what is one area where many players are scared to participate in? No, it's not just ranked PvP. Raids. Raiding has been one of my favorite game modes in Guild Wars 2, and the boss encounters in this game are some of the best in the MMO market. So, I will be touching on the topic of raids, as well as the other areas of endgame PvE content in this video. First and foremost, the question of how would one categorize a party setup comes to mind. Many people have told me, "Oh, KROOF, you can't do it, the game is too flexible." Well, to those I would say, shh, let KROOF make it all better. Or I could be making it worse, I don't know, I'm not a saint. But I do find Elder Scrolls Online's group queue system to be the most fitting system that Guild Wars 2 could take inspiration from. The player character queues up for the role, or multiple roles, they would like to play in the raid. Now, I'm not so short-sighted to expect this to go smoothly, so I would propose a certain background check the player must go through. Guild Wars 2 does not have an item level, but they do have attributes. And with this idea of a 4-role system, please refer to the previous video for clarification on that, each role focuses on a particular attribute. So, in order to sign up for a role, I would have it to where the game would check all of the characters' equipment tabs to see if they fit any of the requirements to sign up. These requirements would be as follows. Damage would need to be greater than or equal to 1600 power or 600 condition damage. Tanking, greater than or equal to 1600 toughness or vitality. Support, greater than or equal to 600 healing power. And the utility category would be greater than or equal to 500 concentration. If a player has one gear template that fulfills one or more of these requirements, they could queue up for as many roles as they wish. With this method, players would not have to necessarily shoot for item level, an arbitrary number that often just denotes a whole character, but they would need to collect gear with stats for a role they specifically are interested in. These requirements can be met with a full set of exotic gear and both weapons, for whichever role is sought after, not even including accessories, rings, and amulets. Trust, I made sure and checked on guildwars2skills.net. This would also serve as a useful benchmark newer players can begin to aim for in terms of stats, and even guide them to learning what these other stats mean in the gameplay of Guild Wars 2. Another idea of a benchmark or tutorial I thought of, just while writing this, would be specific solo strikes for each role where there's a teacher and some training dummies which teach you the different roles and offer a safer environment to get used to skills, while being slightly tested for different mechanics. Damaging, stacking conditions, healing, CC control, break bars, aggro management with taunt, resurrecting downed allies, applying buffs, boons, extending boons and conditions, placing portals, or debuffing a target with unique skills. This is an idea we can see in World of Warcraft, and I specifically remember it with the Mists of Pandaria expansion. I mean, Guild Wars 2 has that training golem room. Add a few more NPCs as teachers with different lessons. Maybe one would need to go through this beginner lesson to at least be able to queue for raid/strike missions as well. But now, what about actually playing the raids? I believe that having the LFG/raid finder be a place where easy mode raids exist would be the perfect place for them. I would make a couple adjustments. Overall, I would say all-in rage timers would be set to a flat 15 minutes for less pressure on the timer, while also not allowing people to hold a group hostage forever. Additionally, all bosses' health pools would be reduced by 20%. Then specific changes could be made to these fights, stripping away some more pressuring mechanics. For example, Velguardian, maybe only one Seeker spawns with a longer cooldown. Instead of 3 teleportation circles, only 2. And a green circle bomb would do maybe less damage and have a longer cooldown between each use. And even with the split phase, instead of having 3 colors, only 2 spawn at any given time at random. The other bosses would have specific adjustments like Gorseval's wall health, expansion of orbs, Sabbatha's turret system, Sabbatha's spawning of the turrets, etc., etc. So that's really how I would devise the LFG queue system for raids in specific, which even connect to strike missions, while also trimming the rewards by half, and maybe only giving one legendary insight upon completing the entire raid wing, with the bonus of one amalgamated gemstone. This would of course be on a weekly reset timer. So what now might this window look like? Well, I made a little mock-up one, but please don't judge my UI/UX skills. I'm running low on funding. Introducing the Adventure tab. This would be an updated landing page for all things endgame PvE content. We already have one for structured PvP, and we have a dedicated tab for War vs. World as well. So why not PvE? 2 tabs would be separated with dungeons and fractals at the top, followed below it with strike missions and raids. At the top of each tab would be the weekly and daily notices. So in the case of dungeons, we'd have weekly dungeons people can complete for perhaps transmutation charges and gold. And then for the daily fractal, this would just kind of leech off of the already existing daily recommended fractal for the tier 1. And as for raids and strike missions, you could maybe have weekly strike missions, and if you complete a certain number of them, you get double the currency of strike missions or double the gold. And then of course the weekly raid, which is already a system in-game, which I believe is from like Call of the Mists. However, this resets every 2 weeks, I believe. I would much rather this be more streamlined and just cycle through one specific raid weekly. Also to point out, you have of course the play dungeon, the play fractal, play strike missions, and play raid. This would not necessarily focus on that one specific recommended fractal or raid, but it would maybe incentivize it before you actually finish it. And then once you finish it, it'll just group you up into random raids and fractals. Of course, below it, or somewhere on the page, you would have to have the different category and role markers that players would have to select to initiate the queue. I even think having specific tabs where you can have a drop-down menu to pick a specific fractal, dungeon, strike mission, or raid would be rather useful in case someone is specifically looking for that particular encounter. Below this, I thought this would actually be a really great opportunity to introduce some type of bestiary system. The bestiary would be below this, showing off tabs where players can select from various categories and further select the specific instance to get a little blurb of lore on the instance they are looking up, and can maybe browse the bosses within the instance. I know a lot of the times with Guild Wars 2, players have to use the third-party Wikipedia page to get more information on boss mechanics, etc., etc. So I thought maybe having a bestiary in-game where you can search up a specific boss through a drop-down menu of a raid wing or strike, etc., might be a very convenient way to implement some of the abilities that certain bosses have to have more of an in-game bestiary where players can contact that and use that as guidance during their raids, rather than having to tab out, go to the wiki, and use external sources, though those external sources are really great to use, and I highly recommend them in the meantime. In addition to this new PvE LFG adventure tab, it also got me thinking about guilds. Just because I was on the topic of extended UI, I also thought about, and was talking with my friends about, what if we had a guild finder? So because LFG is maybe getting a little bit more segmented from PvP, War vs. World, and now with this idea, PvE, the original looking for group system would still stay, but maybe it wouldn't see as much use. So how would we liven this tab up? Well, I think because it definitely specifies into friends and contact lists, this would be the perfect area to also have a guild search tab. It would either be here or on the actual guild menu. Either would be fine with me, but having a guild finder would be really useful. So I was thinking a couple ideas for this that you would have maybe at the very top, new guilds that cycle daily, or you get a slight selection of new guilds that opt into advertising themselves. And then every day you'll get a select sampling. I don't think this would be like entire game-wide. This would kind of be like randomized, just showcasing certain guilds you might be interested in. And then of course, having a specified search option where you can search multiple different categories that guilds themselves attribute themselves with. So maybe you're looking for a guild that is new player friendly, a guild that focuses on open world, a guild that is very story and role play focused, specifically RP. And then What if we want a guild that's endgame PvE focused with fractals, raids, and strike missions? Structured PvP focused, world versus world focused. Maybe people want to find a guild that is specifically crafting and economic minded. So you can get some talks about the economy and certain crafting materials and what's on the up and up, what's not doing so well right now, etc., etc. And then, of course, you'd have to have a section where you have pending requests to check up on them, see if they've been approved, see if they've not been approved. And of course, requesting to join a guild, you need to probably like fill out a little about you section and then maybe like why you're interested and send off a request. So this is just a separate idea that kind of latches on to that looking for group system. So I think having maybe an actual queue system for PvE would be rather beneficial, and in conjunction with this, having a guild finder might also be rather useful in Guild Wars 2. I mean, it's in the name, Guild Wars 2, and you know, having a little bit more highlight to the community might also be helpful with its overall lifespan and sustain. So these were a couple ideas. I hope you enjoyed. Comment down below your thoughts about the ideas presented here. Comment any things that I didn't think of, or maybe a slight disagreement, and I would love to hear and read your comments. I do pay very close attention to them. So thank everyone for coming. Subscribe, comment below, like, share, all that stuff. If you'd like to pre-order End of Dragons, I have links below. And if you'd like help support the Patreon and get early access to videos, and is also in the description below. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone. Mwah.